Hello everyone, we are now in Unit 6. So pretty much for this entire class we've been focused on domestic economics, that is economics here in the United States. We are now going to examine it from a much larger global and international perspective. So our standard for this video involves comparing absolute and comparative advantage. In particular, comparing how they apply to world trade between differing nations. Alright, we have two LQs for this video. What are the benefits of international trade? That is, why shouldn't we just make everything in America? Or why shouldn't we just buy everything from Mexico or China? What are the benefits of trade? And then our second LEQ gets right at our standard. What is the difference between absolute and comparative advantage? So, why should we trade? What are the benefits of international trade? So, the past 30, 40 years or so, we have truly entered the age of a global economy. So learning about international trade is simply learning about everyday life. One of my goals is to make you guys less ignorant. I don't mean ignorant in a derogatory way. Ignorant simply means not knowing. I want to open your eyes that the world is so much larger than this small little town that we live in. Now, imagine if the USA did not import anything from other countries. Remember, think about the GDP formula. Imagine if the USA did not import anything from other countries. So first, most electronic products are produced overseas. A lot of our higher end electronics are produced in Japan and South Korea. All right, even products made by American companies, such as the Boeing 787, which is the big jumbo jet, is pieced together from different parts produced all over the world. For example, the engines are produced here in America, but the fuselage is produced in Japan. The cockpit is produced in South Korea. I may have had those two mixed up, but you get the idea. The parts of the plane are produced all over the world and it's put together like a jigsaw puzzle here in America. Also, this is a big one. This is a big one. Many of our raw materials, such as oil, come from other countries, in addition to coffee, chocolate, pepper, and precious metals. Okay, so as you guys can see, we need to import. That is, we need to buy things from other countries. Now, let's flip that. What if we did not sell to other countries? So first, many American workers are employed in industries that export their goods or services overseas. So guys, here in America, we have about 360 million people. That means at any given time, we can only sell to 360 million people. There is a limited demand to 360 million people. However, guess what? There's about 7 billion people across the world. So it's in our best interest to open up those markets and sell to them to increase the demand for our products. Now, one thing you should know, America is awesome, and most of the most advanced scientific equipment out there is produced here in America. We will let China make our clothes. We will let Mexico make our produce, supply our produce, but we'll take care of all the super advanced scientific stuff. All right, so this is directly at our LEQ. Nations benefit through world trade because each differs in the type and amount of factors of production it has available for use. So I'm going to go back to that prior slide. So why is it that planes should be assembled in America, but the parts are produced elsewhere? Why is it that America is best at advanced high-level engineering and scientific products? And well, this first bullet point is why. The answer is in the factors of production that are available. So think about land, labor, and capital, with land being the single most important factor. Saudi Arabia, a lot of Middle Eastern countries, they produce the majority of the world's oil, which in economics we count as land. So there are also differences in the availability of labor and capital for producing certain goods and services. Now, much of the USA economy is based on high technology production because the factors of production available to us allow for us to do so most efficiently. We have a highly educated workforce that is capable of being engineers. Bolivia in South America, their labor market is not as educated as us. Bolivia does not have a job market for engineers. Also, many manufactured goods are not produced here because other countries have factors of production available to them that makes them better, cheaper, and more efficient at manufacturing than the USA, which is why so many things are made in China. It pains me to say this, but China whether you agree with the ethics or not, can make stuff for cheaper, faster, and more efficiently than we can. So these ideas are what leads us into absolute versus comparative advantage. All right, so here we go. If the United States could produce everything more cheaply than every other nation, it might not want to import anything. Now, you know that situation does not exist for any nation because of differing opportunity costs between nations. That is, the opportunity cost for the United States to grow bananas may be higher than the opportunity cost for Brazil to grow bananas. Okay, so here's an absolute advantage. The ability of one country to produce a product more efficiently that's greater output per unit of input and cheaper factors of production than can another country. Now, I'd like to pause here. In reality, the United States can produce pretty much anything we want to. The United States has an absolute advantage at almost all levels of production of anything. But again, just because we can produce more doesn't mean we should. Yes, we can grow bananas in the United States. However, the opportunity cost of doing so is much higher than if, say, we bought our bananas from Brazil, or Central America, or Mexico. Okay, and that's the idea of specialization. A nation should produce and export a limited assortment of goods for which it is particularly suited in order to remain profitable. So let's do an example. Brazil. Their tropical climate, cheap labor market, and expensive access to capital, that is, Brazil doesn't have fancy equipment, makes it ideal for growing bananas. France, however, has a more moderate climate, expensive labor because France's labor market is very educated, and easy access to capital would not be as efficient at producing bananas. Yes, they can grow bananas there, but the cost would be much higher. But they are better at producing grapes. You need higher levels of capital to farm and harvest grapes, and you also need a bit more knowledgeable farmers to grow grapes because grapes are harder to grow than bananas. Okay. Now, this is what I keep trying to allude at. A nation does not need to have an absolute advantage in the production of a certain good or service to find it in the nation's best interest to specialize elsewhere. Instead, they need the lowest opportunity cost. So that's the take-home point, guys. It's not about who can produce more. It's about who can produce at the lowest opportunity cost. And that idea takes us into comparative advantage. So for the sake of demonstration, comparative advantage is best explained through an example. We're going to look at two countries, Bakalakadaka and Turkadurka. And for the sake of example, they can only produce two products. They can either produce Jordans or cell phones. So here we go. If Bakalakadaka were to produce only Jordans, that is, the entire nation devoted all of their factors of production producing only Jordans, they could produce 20 million units in 1 year. Okay, if all the factors of production in Bakalakadaka, all the land, labor, and capital were to produce only cell phones, they could produce 8 million units in 1 year. Okay. Now we're looking at Turkadurka. If they were to produce only Jordans, they could produce 8 million units in 1 year. If they were to produce only cell phones, they could produce 7 million units in 1 year. So Bakalakadaka has an absolute advantage in the production of Jordans and cell phones. That is, yes, Bakalakadaka can produce more Jordans and more cell phones than can Turkadurka. But does this mean that Bakalakadaka should produce both items and not trade with Turkadurka? And the answer is no. So let's take a look here. So Bakalakadaka can produce significantly more Jordans than Turkadurka with a ratio of 20 to 8. I did not reduce that just so the math is more clear. So Bakalakadaka can produce 20 million Jordans. Turkadurka can produce 8 million Jordans. Okay. To contrast, Bakalakadaka can only produce slightly more cell phones than can Turkadurka. They can produce a ratio of 8 million to 7 million cell phones. So here's the take-home point. It would not make sense for Bakalakadaka to take their valuable land, labor, and capital away from what they're very good at. Bakalakadaka is very good at producing Jordans. Therefore, they should specialize in producing Jordans. Even if that means they're not producing cell phones anymore. So Bakalakadaka's opportunity cost is less if it invested all of its resources into making Jordans and traded with Turka Turka to get cell phones. That means Bakalakadaka has a comparative advantage in the production of Jordans when compared to Turka Turka. Alright guys, we will be practicing these ideas more in class. So here's the LEQ in review. So what are the benefits of international trade? Here's like the one take home I want for you. Nations benefit through world trade because each nation differs in the type and amount of factors of production it has available for use. And our second LEQ, what is the difference between absolute and comparative advantage? Absolute advantage means you are absolutely the best at everything. However, most trade occurs because of comparative advantage. The reason why is because, remember guys, economics, it's all about minimizing opportunity cost. All right, that's all I have for you guys. Have a good one.